Passengers trapped in frozen robotaxis on a Wuhan highway. Gig workers in Lagos strapping iPhones to their foreheads to teach robots how to fold laundry. And the company that built its identity around being the careful one accidentally published 500,000 lines of its own source code to the entire internet. And it's April 1st, but none of this is a joke. Let's go. Here's the thing about building fast. You can have the best intentions in the world. You can write safety papers. You can win a federal court injunction because a judge agrees that your values deserve legal protection. And then a single file, one file that should have been excluded from a published package, undoes you. And that's what happened to Anthropic. Version 2.1.88 of Claude Code went out as a routine NPM update, except it included a source map file that pointed to a zip archive sitting on Anthropic's Cloudflare storage. A security researcher named Xiaofan Shou spotted it within hours. By the time Anthropic could respond, the archive had been downloaded, decompressed, and uploaded to GitHub and forked more than 50,000 times. So what leaked? Everything. Nearly 2,000 files, more than 512,000 lines of TypeScript. The complete architectural blueprint for one of the most commercially successful AI products on Earth. Memory systems with a background rewriting and validity checks, over 60 feature flags for capabilities that haven't shipped yet, a feature called KAIROS that appears to be an always-on background agent, and, I love this, a Tamagotchi-style digital pet that reacts to your coding activity. So internal system prompts, permission structures, tool use logic, all of it out in the open. And this was the second leak in a week. Just days earlier, nearly 3,000 internal files surfaced in a publicly accessible data cache, including draft materials describing Claude Mythos, a model Anthropic hadn't announced yet. A model whose internal documentation warns that it presages an upcoming wave of models that can exploit vulnerabilities in ways that far outpace the efforts of defenders. So what do you do with this? The easy take is that Anthropic messed up, and that's fair. But the more honest take is scarier and more interesting. This is the company that literally went to federal court and won the argument that its safety commitments are constitutionally protected speech. The judge called the Pentagon's attacks on those commitments Orwellian. That was 4 days ago. And the same organization, with the same people, the same values, the same commitment to care, shipped its entire product to the internet through a build pipeline error. The mistake wasn't really lack of trying, but speed. The cadence of shipping that Anthropic has had recently, the velocity of updates, the market's insatiable demand for the next version. Nobody is exempt from that pressure, even the most careful. Nobody's exempt. TechCrunch's headline really summed it up. Anthropic is having a month, is what it said. But I think the signal is bigger than one company's bad week. What this reveals is that the compression defining this era doesn't pause for good intentions. The framework for managing that compression, for catching a misconfigured build before it goes live, those frameworks have to mature at the same speed as the capabilities. And right now, for everyone, they're behind. All right, let's shift away to another story. While Anthropic was dealing with that, OpenAI was doing something very different, closing the largest private funding round in Silicon Valley history. $122 billion, $852 billion valuation, $200 billion a month in revenue. Amazon, Nvidia, SoftBank anchoring the round with $110 billion plus another $3 billion from individual investors. Plans for what they're calling a unified AI super app. ChatGPT, coding, web browsing, and agentic capabilities all centralized. Those numbers are staggering, and they arrive against a backdrop that complicates every single one of them. Within the past month, OpenAI shut down Sora, killed its billion-dollar Disney partnership 6 months after launch. They quietly ended their instant checkout shopping experiment. They shelved another planned chatbot feature. The Wall Street Journal reports that they don't expect to be profitable until 2030, and they face a trial next month. Elon Musk is alleging breach of the company's founding agreement. The Guardian framed this as a company trimming the fat before an IPO, narrowing from an everything business to a focused developer infrastructure play. And there's a reason to think that is the right move. Anthropic holds 73% enterprise market share, according to Ramp data. Trying to be everywhere isn't working for OpenAI. But here's the tension that's really worth, being careful about. 122 billion for a company losing billions annually isn't an investment in today and right now. It is a wager that the revenue curve eventually bends hard enough to justify this infrastructure. The entire AI industry is making that same wager. Over $635 billion in committed spending. So whether that investment builds the kind of broadly shared abundance that these systems are capable of producing, or whether it concentrates returns inside the organizations that deployed the capital, that is the defining economic question of the next 5 years. And then there's Microsoft, down 23% this quarter. Worst performance since 2008, since the financial crisis. And Microsoft isn't failing. They reported a 17% revenue growth, but the market is punishing them anyway. And the reason is structural. Copilot, their flagship AI assistant, has achieved just 3% penetration among commercial office customers, despite massive investment. 3% after billions in infrastructure. Azure cloud growth could have been higher if they'd allocated AI chips to cloud customers instead of internal products. They've already shuffled leadership. They moved Mustafa Suleyman away from Copilot consumer development and brought in a former Snap executive. Oracle, on the same day, cutted an estimated 10,000 jobs. Senior engineers, architects, cloud infrastructure specialists, these are not underperformers. They're the people who built what Oracle is, and they eliminated them so the company can fund the data center build-out that its $300 billion OpenAI deal now requires. And here's the number that frames all of it together. SaaS industry earnings, multiples, have fallen below the S&P 500 for the first time. SaaSter founder Jason Lemkin called much of traditional SaaS likely terminal decay. Terminal decay for a category that defined enterprise technology for more than 2 decades. So what's happening isn't that software companies are doing badly. It's that the market is starting to treat them as a category in structural decline. The per-seat licensing model, where you pay monthly for every employee who uses a tool, that model assumed humans were the unit of work. When intelligence is embedded in infrastructure instead of sold as a product, and when an AI agent can do in seconds what a team used to need 3 SaaS subscriptions to accomplish, the math of per-seat pricing just breaks. And that repricing is going to be painful. It already is painful for a lot of people. It's real for the tens of thousands of workers at Oracle, at Block, at Atlassian, at Epic Games, at many other companies who've lost their jobs in recent months. But the trajectory through that pain points towards systems that deliver dramatically more capability at dramatically lower cost and for everyone. The Century Report has been tracking this pattern since Block's 4,000-person reduction in February. What Oracle adds is the starkest version yet, a company eliminating the human workforce that built its infrastructure in order to fund the AI infrastructure that replaces it. This is not metaphor. That's a line item. Okay, now I want to take you somewhere that makes all of this feel very personal. Lagos, Delhi, Buenos Aires, a small apartment, an iPhone strapped to a forehead with a mounting band. MIT Technology Review published a feature yesterday on what might be the most structurally revealing labor story of this entire transition so far. Thousands of gig workers across more than 50 countries are recording themselves doing household chores. Folding laundry, washing dishes, cooking, ironing, and selling that footage to robotics companies, training humanoid machines to do those exact same tasks. A company called Micro One, based in Palo Alto, coordinates much of that data collection. They pay $15 an hour, which is genuinely good income in many of these countries, and the work is showing a lot of excitement on LinkedIn and YouTube. Workers are vetted by an AI agent named Zara that conducts interviews and reviews sample videos. Robotics companies are spending over $100 million annually on this data, and demand is only accelerating. The workers describe it with really striking honesty. A medical student named Zeus finds ironing clothes for hours every day boring, but really values the income. A tutor in Delhi named Arjun spends an hour making 15-minute video because he runs out of new chores to record in his small apartment. Their living spaces, their possessions, their daily routines, all captured in detail for corporate use. Now feel the architecture of that. A person in Lagos is teaching a machine through their own body, hands, and home. Now, this work generates an income for them today, but it trains the system that makes that work unnecessary tomorrow. That's not just a thought experiment. That's the job description, train displacement. And that's happening more and more, not just in household chores. In fact, household chores are catching up to where it's already happening, that displacement, in the tech industry. And then, same day, Wuhan, more than 100 of Baidu's robotaxis froze simultaneously on public roads. Passengers were trapped for up to 90 minutes. Crashes were reported. Police confirmed it was a system failure. The vehicles worked flawlessly until they encountered conditions that their training did not cover, and then they just stopped. So those two stories are the same story. A robotaxi fleet failed because a physical world intelligence required physical world data at a scale and diversity that simulations can't provide. The gig workers strapping phones to their heads are building exactly that data layer, the training substrate for the next generation of embodied machines. So the gap between what autonomous systems can handle today and what the real world actually throws at them is still wide enough to strand passengers on a highway. The gap is closing. The workers filming their chores are the ones closing it. Waymo, for context, is now completing 500,000 paid rides per week across 10 US cities. The trajectory is unmistakably forward. But the Wuhan freeze is a reminder that the distance between works almost always and works always is where the hardest engineering lives. And the question nobody has answered yet, which is what happens to domestic workers in Lagos and Delhi once the machines they're training can fold their own laundry, that's the governance and economic design challenge that will define whether the generative era delivers abundance broadly or concentrates it narrowly. Couple quick hits from yesterday. 2 model releases worth knowing about. Prism ML came out of stealth yesterday with Bonsai, the first commercially viable 1-bit large language model family. 3 sizes, 8B, 4B, and 1.7B parameters. The 8B model fits in a single gigabyte of memory. That's 14 times smaller than a standard full precision model at the same parameter count. And it runs 8 times faster and still matches benchmark performance. Apache 2.0 license available right now on Hugging Face. Go look it up. If you've been watching the efficiency frontier, this is a significant marker. It's genuinely useful language models that can run on your phone. And Google released Veo 3.1 Lite, which is a cost-optimized video generation model available through Gemini's API. So it's the same speed as regular Veo 3.1 Fast, but at less than half the cost. So 5 cents per second at 720p. It's got text to video, image to video, up to 1080p. So if you're building anything that needs high volume video generation, that price point just made a lot of ideas viable that really weren't last week. Here's what I want to leave you with. Everything we covered today shares a quality that I think defines this exact moment in the transition. The gap between capability and control. Anthropic can build one of the most sophisticated AI products on Earth and lose its source code through a build pipeline error. OpenAI can raise $122 billion and still not expect to turn a profit for years. The SaaS industry can generate healthy revenue and still be repriced as a terminal. A robotaxi fleet can complete millions of rides and still freeze on a highway the moment conditions exceed its training. And a worker in Lagos can teach a machine to do domestic work brilliantly and for very good pay while building the very system that eventually makes the job unnecessary. The capability is running ahead. The frameworks, such as safety, governance, economic design, and institutional control, are trying to keep pace. Very soon, watch for whether Anthropic's operational failures change the terms of its federal court victory. Watch for the first robotics company to publicly disclose how it plans to transition the gig workers training its systems. And watch for whether the SaaS repricing accelerates into something the labor market can feel. We'll see you tomorrow.